हम कहाँ होंगे, न हम होंगे न तुम होगे, न देर होगा, मगर फिर भी हजारों मंजिलें होंगी, हजारों कारवां होंगे, बहारें हमको ढूंढ। आ गए आप सब? बढ़िया। मैंने तो सोचा था कौन आएगा शेक्सपियर, हैमलेट ये सब देखने के लिए, किस पे पास वक्त है, और वक्त हो तो फुर्सत कहाँ, फुर्सत हो तो सब्र कहाँ, है ना। पर आज आप सब आए, अच्छा लगा। तो चूंकि मैं सूत्रधार हूँ और कहानी को आगे बढ़ाना ही मेरा काम है, तो कहानी को आगे बढ़ाएं, क्योंकि यही तो काम है कहानी का, आगे चलते रहना। तो आज मैंने सोचा कि कुछ अलग करते हैं, है ना, क्योंकि अब ऐसा तो है नहीं कि शेक्सपियर साहब उठ के चले आएंगे अपनी कब्र में से और रोकेंगे टोकेंगे मुझे, कहेंगे thou shalt not change my play or my plot or the scenes or the acts। ऐसा तो है नहीं ना। तो एक बताऊं आपको कि ये जब से ऑनलाइन का सिलसिला शुरू हुआ है ना, शेक्सपियर का, हैमलेट का, तब से शेक्सपियर का भूत मंडराता है मेरे आसपास, मेरे इर्द गिर्द ही रहता है। और जी सच कह रहे हैं, क्योंकि बिजली उड़ा ले जाते हैं जी, जब देखो तब। हाँ, अब पिछली बार तो खेल को आधे में रोकना पड़ा था, पर आज पूरी तैयारी के साथ आए हैं। मोमबत्ती भी है, माचिस भी है, आप हैं, हम हैं, माहौल है। तो शुरू करते हैं एक कहानी से। हाँ, कहानी है रानी की, रानी हेकुबा की। अब रानी हेकुबा कौन थी? रानी हेकुबा ट्रोजन युद्ध के दौरान जो राजा प्रियम थे ना, तो उनकी पत्नी रानी हेकुबा। और ये ऐसी वैसी कहानी ना है, हाँ, कि एक था राजा एक थी रानी, दोनों मर गए, खत्म कहानी। पर ये कहानी मैं आपको क्यों सुना रही हूँ, है अब वो इसलिए कि शेक्सपियर ने हैमलेट में इस कहानी का इस्तेमाल किया है, हैमलेट को कुछ दिखलाने के लिए, उसे कुछ बतलाने के लिए, समझाने के लिए, खुद से वाकिफ करने के लिए, अपने हकीकत से वाकिफ करने के लिए, हैमलेट को हकीकत के अंदर एक और हकीकत, कहानी के अंदर एक और कहानी। होता ये है कि हैमलेट के दरबार में एक नाटक मंडली आती है और वो पेश करते हैं कहानी हेकुबा रानी की नाटक के जरिए। और नाटक देखते देखते हैमलेट को एहसास होता है कि वो अकेला पड़ गया है, क्योंकि वो कहता है, Now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit? हैमलेट देखता है और उसे याद आता है, खुद के हालात उसे याद आते हैं। अगर आपको याद ना हो तो आपको याद दिला दें, रिकैप कर देते हैं आपके लिए। अब रिकैप किस मर्ज की दवा है। तो हैमलेट के पिता का कत्ल किया गया था और उसके चाचा के हाथ रंगे थे उसके बाप के खून से, और ऐसे में उसकी माँ गर्ट्रूड की शादी हो जाती है हैमलेट के चाचा से। और तब उसे लगता है कि वो जो आंसू बहा नहीं पाया, वो आंसू एक कलाकार किरदार निभाते हुए बहा देता है। और उसके मन में एक सवाल पैदा होता है, What's Hecuba to him? Or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do? Had he the motive and cue for passion that I have? He would drown the stage in tears and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty and appall the free, confound the ignorant and amaze indeed the very difficulty of eyes and ears. हैमलेट को ये देखकर यूं लगता है कि वो अकेला तो है ही, पर जो हालात हैं उसकी वजह से उसमें एक जुनून पैदा होता है, एक ऐसा जबरदस्त जुनून कि क्या बताएं। मगर क्यों? ऐसा क्या था उस नाटक में? युद्ध के दौरान राजा प्रियम को मौत के घाट उतार दिया गया था और पिरस ने उनकी जान ली थी। और तब हेकुबा को उनकी मौत देखना पड़ा था। और क्यों मारा था फिर इसने राजा को प्रियम को इसलिए मारा था क्योंकि उससे बदला लेना था अपने पिता के खून का, अकिलीज की मृत्यु का उसे बदला लेना था। और तब हैमलेट को लगता है कि वो अकेला भी है और उसमें एक डर भी है। और नाटक देखते देखते ना वो देखता है कि एक कलाकार कुछ यूं कह जाता है कि लफ्ज उसकी समझ में नहीं आते, मगर जो किरदार कहना चाहता है और जो मुद्दा कलाकार उठाना चाहता है वो दोनों ही बातें उसके दिल को छू जाती हैं। मगर वो कलाकार इस तरह क्यों बोल गया उन लफ्जों को? क्या उसे कोई डर था? हो सकता है नए राजा रानी का डर, हो सकता है नए राजा क्लॉडियस का डर जो हैमलेट को भी था, और उसकी रानी हैमलेट की मां गर्ट्रूड का डर। लो, कहा था ना जाएगी बिजली। तैयारी तो है भाई, पूरी तैयारी है। शेक्सपियर साहब देख लीजिए, हाँ मोमबत्ती भी लाए हैं। कैसी अजीब बात है ना कि जब अंधेरा हो और सन्नाटा भी तो डर लगता है। आपको लगता है डर अंधेरे से? सच सच बताइए। हाँ, या फिर कहानी सुनते वक्त, पढ़ते वक्त, देखते वक्त डर लगता है आपको? भाई मुझे तो लगता है। हाँ, सूत्रधार हूं फिर भी डर तो बना रहता है। और खासकर आजकल इस ऑनलाइन की दुनिया में ना बहुत डर लगता है जी। क्योंकि देखिए ना, अगर मैं कुछ कहूँ हाँ, और आप कुछ और समझ बैठे हैं, कोई और ही मतलब निकालें उसका, तो फिर बस झगड़ा झंझट ट्रोलिंग शुरू। और आजकल गुस्सा तो इतना है, पहले क्या था, गुस्सा नाक पे लिए घूमते थे लोग, आजकल जब कीपैड पे ठोकते हैं ना उंगलियों को, हाँ, तो उनकी उंगलियों की रफ्तार में दिखता है गुस्सा। ऐसा गुस्सा जिसका बयान करना भी मुश्किल है लफ्जों में, ऐसा गुस्सा जो किसी को भी बेबस कर जाए। और वही बेबसी हैमलेट को महसूस हो रही थी। Yet I, like a dull and muddy metal rusk, peak like John dreams. I'm pregnant of my cause and cannot say a thing. No, not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Am I a coward? लगता है कहा था ना, शेक्सपियर का भूत। जरा देख आती हूँ। हैं, कहा था ना, अब बिजली उड़ा ले गए, अंधेरा कर दिया, हाँ, पर जी नहीं भरा, तो बिल्ली के अंदर घुस के तहलका मचाए हैं, मूंगफली कुरमुरा हर चीज गिरा दी है। मैंने भी थोड़ा कुछ मुंह में डाल लिया, बहुत भूख लगी थी। आपको लगी है भूख, आप भी कुछ लेके आ जाइए ना। क्या है ना, इस स्क्रीन के सामने बैठे बैठे बहुत भूख लगती है। आप भी कोई अपनी मनपसंद चीज लेकर आ जाइए ना, या फिर आप मुझे अनप्रोफेशनल कहेंगे कि कैसी सूत्रधार है, कहानी के बीच खा रही है, खेल के बीच। पर एक बात बताऊं, यह वेस्ट ऑफ टाइम नहीं है। आप सोच रहे होंगे आपका टाइम वेस्ट हो रहा है, मगर मेरे पास तो वक्त है, और चूंकि मैं सूत्रधार हूं तो मैं कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ, है ना। तो क्यों ना हम एक नए हैमलेट की कल्पना करें। हो सकता है, सोचिए तो, वैसे हम, मेरा बस चलता ना तो मैं हैमलेट को कुरमुरा खाते देखती। हाँ, काश शेक्सपियर ने भी हैमलेट को खाने पीने की छूट दे रखी होती। हम तो चाहते हैं ना अपने किरदारों को खाते पीते सोते जागते खर्राटे भरते नहाते देखना चाहते हैं। बताइए, देखना चाहते हैं, है ना, पर देख नहीं पाते अक्सर। तो सोचिए, अगर हैमलेट को हम कुरमुरा खाते देखें तो कैसा नजारा होगा कि वो अकेले खड़े खड़े सोच रहा है कि मैं अपने बाप के खून का बदला कैसे लूं, और वो कुरमुरा खा रहा है अकेले। ये अकेले खाने का तजुर्बा जो है वो कुछ और ही है। हाँ, आप में से किसी को हुआ है ये तजुर्बा, अकेले रहने का, मेरी तरह, हैमलेट की तरह? चलिए पोल करते हैं। हाँ, मतलब, अरे आपकी पोल ना खुलेगी, फिक्र ना करें। हाँ, आपको बस हाँ या ना में जवाब देना है, नाम तक नहीं बताना है, सब अनोनिमस रखा है। हाँ, ठीक है, क्योंकि आपकी प्राइवेसी का ख्याल है ना हमको। एक तरफ सब डेटा 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 करते हैं, पर दूसरी तरफ आपका भी ख्याल है। ठीक है, तो आपको बस सवाल के जवाब देने हैं। तो पहला सवाल है, क्या आप अकेले रहते हैं और इसलिए आपको अकेलापन महसूस होता है? बताइए बताइए, और सच बताना है। हाँ, तो ये देखें कितने लोग हैं अकेले। अच्छा, मतलब कोई अकेले है ही नहीं, तो हैमलेट के बाद हम ही हैं एक। ठीक है जी, तो मतलब आप सब के पास कोई ना कोई है घर में, है ना, लोग हैं, तो क्या फिर भी आपको अकेलापन महसूस होता है? ये बताइए। अच्छा, तो मतलब झिक झिक झंझट झमेला घर में जारी है, जिंदगी में एकदम ये बुलंद है। है ना? तो अच्छा, ये समझिए कि आप अकेले नहीं हैं, क्योंकि आपके पास कोई जानवर है। हाँ, कुत्ता बिल्ली तोता मैना कोई भी जानवर, और इसलिए आपको अकेलापन महसूस नहीं होता। ऐसे कितने लोग हैं ये बताइए। अच्छा जी, तो मतलब लोगों से नहीं बनती मगर जानवरों से बन जाती है। ऐसे कई लोग हैं, सोशल एनिमल है ना, तो ऐसा तो होगा। हाँ, किसी ना किसी से बनानी पड़ेगी हमको। वैसे एक कहें आपसे, अकेला रहना भी ना इतनी बुरी बात ना है। हाँ, बड़ा सुकून है इसमें, किसी से कोई झिकझिक नहीं, झंझट नहीं, कुछ नहीं। पर हर किसी के बस की बात नहीं है ये। हाँ, मतलब नॉट टू बी ट्राइड अलोन एट होम। हाँ, एक्सपर्ट गाइडेंस एडवाइज्ड। तो अब हैमलेट भी अकेले ही बदला लेना चाह रहा है अपने चाचा से, पर उसे लगता है कि बार बार यही लगता है कि उसमें वो जिगरा है ही नहीं। वो होता है अब वाकिफ अपने अकेलेपन से, अपने डर से, अपने अतीत से, अपने आने वाले कल से, और उसे ये लगता है कि उसमें वो जिगरा नहीं है। कहता है वो, But I am pigeon-livered and lack gall to make oppression bitter. What an ass am I? This is most brave, that I, the son of a dear father murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must, like a whore, unpack my heart with words. मतलब एक वेश्या की तरह, अस्कालियन। शेक्सपियर ये कैसी बराबरी कर गए कि अगर हैमलेट ने अपने दिल का बोझ हल्का किया लफ्जों का सहारा लेकर, तो वो एक औरत से कम ना होगा, एक वेश्या से भी कम ना होगा। क्यों भाई? अपने दिल की बात कहना, अपनी मजबूरी कबूल करना, अपनी कमजोरी कबूल करना, ये सिर्फ एक औरत की निशानी है, मर्द ही नहीं कर सकते। और शायद यही वजह रही होगी कि गर्ट्रूड न कुछ कह पाई, न कर पाई, ना ही ओफिलिया हैमलेट की प्रेमिका। तभी तो ये किरदार अधूरे से लगते हैं। हैमलेट भी कहता तो कितना कुछ है, पर होता कुछ और ही है। अब मैं इस तुलना से सहमत नहीं हूं, मेरे पल्ले नहीं पड़ती ये बात, मैं सहमत नहीं हूं। हाँ जी, मैं कर लीजिए आप, नहीं हूं मैं सहमत। अब शेक्सपियर को जो कहना था वो तो कह गया अपने जमाने में, है ना। अब नया दौर है, नया हैमलेट भी बनता है ना। अब हैमलेट भी बेचारा खुद से कितनी बातें कर गया, आप तक हम तक पहुंच गई बातें, मगर जिसके कारण पे पढ़नी थी ना वो बातें, वो ना पहुंची उन तक। It is not, nor it cannot come to good. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer, the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. And let all sleep, while to my shame I see the imminent death of 20,000 men. That for a fantasy and trick of fame. हैमलेट हमसे शायद कुछ कहना चाह रहा है बार बार, कि वो ना निडर बना फिरता है इधर उधर, वो डरा हुआ है, कह रहा है वो मैं डरपोक हूं। क्या हम ऐसे हैमलेट की कल्पना कर सकते हैं? अब इसे बुजदिली कह लीजिए या बड़प्पन। शायद वो बदला नहीं लेना चाहता, और अगर हैमलेट एक औरत होता तो इस कहानी का अंत क्या होता? हैमलेट नाटक देखते देखते सोचता है कि जिस तरह नाटक का असर हुआ उस पे, तो उसी तरह अगर वो नाटक का इस्तेमाल करे तो वो अपने चाचा को एहसास दिला सकता है कि आज भी, आज की तारीख में उसके हाथ रंगे हैं उसके पिता के खून से। I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have, by the very cunning of the scene, been struck so to the soul that they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it have no tongue, will speak with miraculous organ. I will have these players here play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. I'll observe his looks. I'll tend him to the quick. If he do blench, I know my course. एक नाटक के जरिए सच की अपेक्षा। कितना सेकंड हैंड तरीका चुना है शेक्सपियर साहब ने, नहीं? आपको नहीं लगता? शायद ये शेक्सपियर की तरकीब थी। हाँ, ये एक तरकीब थी हैमलेट को उलझाने की। बेचारा पहले से ही उलझा हुआ है, सोलिलोकी पे सोलिलोकी, सोलिलोकी पे सोलिलोकी, और फिर अपने बाप के भूत से मिलकर तो वो और भी उलझ जाता है। The spirit that I have seen may be a devil, and the devil hath power to assume a most pleasing shape. Yeah, and perhaps out of my weakness and melancholy. For he is very potent in such spirits. Abuses me to damn me. I shall find grounds more relative than this. हैमलेट बार बार अपने गमों को, अपने डर को मिटाता रहता है बार बार, क्योंकि शायद उसे डर है कि सबको उससे कोई ना कोई उम्मीद है, और है, सबको उससे कोई ना कोई उम्मीद है, हर किसी को है, राजा रानी को है, उनकी प्रजा को है, आम लोगों को है, जनता को है, उसके इर्द गिर्द के लोगों को है, उसके दोस्तों को है, उसके अपने परायों को है, अजी आपको हमको भी तो है, आज की तारीख में है। और अगर हम कल्पना करें एक अलग हैमलेट की, अब ये तो एक समुंदर के किनारे खड़े होने जैसा है, एक मुमकिन जवाबों के समुंदर किनारे, पर अगर हम सोचें तो क्या होगा उस हैमलेट का सच, वो हैमलेट जो हमारे बीच घूमता फिरता है, निडर बने हुए, अपने डर को छुपाए, वो हैमलेट जो शायद हमारे अंदर है, हमारे दिलो दिमाग में बसा हुआ है। क्या होगा वो सच जो उभर आए, क्या होगा वो सच जो उभर आए जब झूठ के सारे नकाब उतर जाए। वो कहाँ ढूंढ पाएगा वो सच, हैमलेट कहाँ ढूंढ पाएगा इसे, एक ख्याली नींव पर खड़े नाटक में, झूठ मूठ की दुनिया के किरदारों में, और वो सच झेल पाएगा क्या हैमलेट खुद, क्या दुनिया उसे अपना पाएगी उस सच को, क्या हम सच सिर्फ एक कहानी में कबूल कर सकते हैं, शायद ऐसा है, क्योंकि शायद यही एक चारा बचा था शेक्सपियर के पास, हाँ, और तभी तो हैमलेट कहता है, the place, the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. क्या हम एक नए हैमलेट की कल्पना कर सकते हैं? शेक्सपियर वाला नहीं, आपका, हमारा अपना हैमलेट।
Wow, thank you so much for that absolutely incredible performance, Padmavati or Sutradhar, if I should say. And everyone, please feel free to put your comments, your questions and first reactions into the Q&A box. We'll be taking questions from all of you. And Chanakya, the director of this piece, and Padmavati Rao, the actor and the person who's devised it, will be back with us. So I invite them both to come on screen now, and we can start sort of discussing some of the really important things this episode of Hamlet's Live brings to the forefront. So Chanakya, Padmavati, are you there? Hi.
Yeah, I think Padmavati ma'am will join us in about a minute.
Sure, no worries. Yeah. So that was an absolutely brilliant and very impactful performance. I think even though yesterday we were talking about the aggression that made the impact, I think this time it was just the dialogue and the way it was delivered itself. You didn't need that sort of aggression or the anger to come through for it to be really impactful. And I think so. Thank you both for that, and thank you of course to the rest of the cast and crew of Hamlet's Live also for making so perhaps okay, there are already questions and comments in the chat. So Neha says this was a terrific performance. I completely agree. And let me just start with Lakshmi's question, which takes place towards the end of the performance, which is when you say our version of Hamlet, what do you mean? I think either of you or both of you could answer it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about, Hamlet being not just a character, but a metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And can we look at how Hamlet plays out in our lives and become aware of the dynamics that were in operation, the dynamics of emotion, not just politics, not just um, factors on the exterior, like when he talks in this particular piece, we're talking about what was it that actor wanted to say,
Mm-hmm.
which he just mumbles. Yeah, and this reference is there in Hamlet, and those are pretty much the realities of our times also. So is there self-censorship that we as artists impose on ourselves? So to take a look at things like that, not just in our roles, but also in our personhood, that does the Hamlet in us uh, seek revenge, or does he seek justice?
Mm.
Can justice be without violence, without retributive violence? Can justice take a different form? And what is it I can mold in terms of my own expectations of life
Right.
by looking at Hamlet, and his realities? So I think this whole exercise has been an invitation to do that.
Mm. Right. Chanakya, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just am I audible?
Yeah.
I just want to add to what Padmavati ma'am said. And I think it connects to the process itself in the beginning when we were trying to figure out what do we want to really say through this soliloquy. It's one of the longest soliloquies
Mm-hmm.
that this piece deals with, and I feel like we wanted to open this idea of Hamlet having been interpreted also over over so many years by different people in so many different ways. So
Right.
the fact that it allows for such varied interpretation, and as ma'am rightly said, I think that possibility of what can happen is itself the real thing of our Hamlet. So when I say our Hamlet, it could be very much connect to your own life. How do you wish to see Hamlet really outside of the play itself? And one of the things that we started talking very early on in the process was this question of loneliness also. It came out, and not just loneliness, but along with loneliness, what do we expect from characters in stories?
Mm.
There is this whole idea, which is why yesterday's piece, where there is the whole upfront playing of revenge. How do I take revenge, and how sometimes revenge stories also satisfy the
Right.
reader or the listener or the viewer, and how within stories how we have expectations of characters to do certain things. And look at all the stories today, all the superhero stories or wherever, whatever kind of commercial films you might want to talk about. I mean, there is always this element of revenge that one wants to play with, and it's interesting that we wanted to think of this whole idea that okay, revenge itself can be questioned within this and through this piece, because in the soliloquy, in fact, Hamlet goes through so many things that you actually wonder, is this one person thinking so many things? Because from one moment he calls himself pigeon livered, and then he goes on to talking about the comparison that he makes of crying, and then he goes on to talking about his own self doubt about his father's goal. So it just goes on to this really also tells you a very conflicted mind, a very divided mind in that sense. So I think that itself gives us possibilities to think of how do we want to see Hamlet. And in the piece, I think this line came through the process, this question of एक एक डरा हुआ Hamlet, which is what Sutradhar tells, and I think it is one of the things that we are trying to look at through the piece. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. And I think like the question of, justice versus revenge, or is there retributive justice, or, is there restorative justice? And I think those are really important questions for all of us to ask. That, of course, like in this performance stem from the play of Hamlet, but like both of you have mentioned, go much beyond into our lived experiences and our daily lives as well. And in some senses, perhaps we can then look at perhaps seeing this concept of justice or revenge or fear even as being part of our collective psyches in whatever communities or places that we might find ourselves in. So that's a really interesting question, thought. And thank you both for that answer. And let me just see what other questions there are in the box. Okay, so someone asks, can both of you talk about the process of developing this piece? And given that, to be or not to be is the most famous, like, sort of line, and thus making this the most famous soliloquy, how did you go about adapting it, especially for a Zoom platform? And if I might add a little bit to that question, I was just wondering, this is the first piece we've seen that where there isn't a person, right? Like it's not someone vlogging, or it's not someone who does like YouTube vlogs. It's a narrator, and that's sort of a very different experience, I would imagine, while both creating and performing, as compared to the other episodes that we've seen. So perhaps if you could also talk about that as well.
Uh, I think I'll keep it very short, and I think then ask Sam to also add. I think I think the process very difficult to encapsulate, to be very honest, in a short thing. But I think the process was really to start by looking at the soliloquy itself, and then within that, I think the initial first few rehearsals were actually about, as I was telling in all the other Hamlet Lives episode also, it was always about how does this speak to the actor, how does it speak to them, and in those conversations I think we found by chipping away, by adding, by chipping, by adding, like I think it's a continuous process of adding and taking away, we slowly started finding, and I think we found the character also somewhere midway. We were not even sure in the beginning what was it starting with, but we were just starting with the idea of what do we want to say, what do we want to actually explore through this. But yeah, love to hear what Padmavati ma'am wants to add. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much what you said. I mean, we improvised a lot, and I think there is a certain magic in a performance, which is happening at least three levels that one can be aware of in any one moment. One is the actor in the role, yeah, of an actor. and the other is the character, and the third is the person, apart from the role and apart from the character, right? When I say role, I'm talking about the function of an actor. When the actor has to be all there, know the lines, know the cues, know all that. The character has his own persona, which has to be delved into. And then there's the person, who is the actor and the character. And what does the person bring from her experience, you know? I think so. That's how it worked for me. And it was in the improvisations, that it is in that moment of spontaneity where you haven't planned what to say. You haven't planned what you are going to feel, right? All you have is this one line from the director. And the
Yeah.
director says, okay, let's, delve into this. And then there's something that comes up, and loneliness was one thing that sort of kept coming up. And we decided to delve into that and look at that. And especially in COVID times, it was a hard reality that one lived with. And to look at how it spoke, with relevance to Hamlet. So that was how it worked for us. Yeah, and yeah, like he said, it was about sculpting and carving and chipping and tinkering, with it.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I think the process of creating each of these pieces has been so interesting to hear about. But yes, I have some other thoughts, but I think there are quite a few questions and comments in the chat. So let me just go with that. So Mayura asks, I'm curious about how the idea of face painting came up. It was very effective and made the experience very layered, quite literally. And the part where the sutradhar speaks to the demons, and we know that Hamlet is wrecked by many, and then you paint the lines around the eyes. They found that very powerful. So if you could both perhaps speak a little bit. I would also like to add that when you're wiping off the makeup, and then you're saying, can the mask come off, and literally it's coming off. That's also a very interesting and powerful moment. But yeah, please do go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that I knew was, when this line came up in one of the improvs, I happened to say this, कि वो क्या सच होगा जब झूठ के सारे नकाब उतर जाएं. And I was doing this, and I said, there's got to be something there to remove, right? So,
Yeah.
and then also Chanakya was very clear that, we wanted to have that feel of a performer,
Mhm.
the way a performer is made up for a performance.
Right.
So, slightly more accentuated rouge and things like that, with the makeup of an artist ready for performance. And then we said, we will use it only um, in proportion of what is required, you know, and not do, too much. So just a line to say Junoon, and the whole thing of the mustache coming on. And somewhere in that, because we did also, if you start talking about masculinity and femininity and all of that, it all becomes even more verbose than it already is. But then just these strokes, or just the tika, and then removing that, says a lot about shedding all of that without actually talking about it. Even the devil assuming most uh, pleasing shape, things like that. Yeah, so I think that was it. We allowed that to flow organically and evolve organically. And yeah, that was it really.
I
Achana.
just want to add a very interesting experience how we actually added. So we were rehearsing at ma'am's house, and she suddenly said, "You know what? I think we should add some layer to this." And she quickly went and she just put, very base makeup, and she said, "Let me try something."
Oh, the Multani Mitti.
It was Multani Mitti, and
Yeah.
she used that, and that was the rehearsal we were doing.
Okay.
And suddenly there was this whole thing that she just said, the whole wiping off and adding and creating shapes. And I was like, okay, there's so much that layers that can happen. And that's when I think one more discovery that we made was the idea of realities. There is the reality of the sutradhar when the glass falls, when the cat comes, when the light goes off.
Right.
There is the reality of Hamlet. And then there is the reality of the performer also. So, you're alternating between these realities. And, to the question that was asked about the makeup, I think somewhere it was to heighten that also. It was to heighten the sort of various ways in which different aspects, which is why we also use this idea. I think that also was a very later on discovery in the process where you look away and you say those lines and then you look back.
Yeah.
That that also helped us create that kind of distance. But yeah, I think the entire use of face makeup, the use of those elements, the lines and everything was completely something that she devised during the performance and during the rehearsals, and that came out really. It added a layer to the whole piece. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think even those white like tears, I mean, because the lighting is slightly soft, you almost feel like they might actually be, and that's really interesting to see as an audience member as well. Did either of you have anything else to add, or before we sort of jump on to another? So I know we were talking a little bit about masculinity, and there is of course this sort of way that the Sutradhar talks about, womanhood and like how expressing feelings is part of this like understanding of femininity, and it sort of connects to this question that was asked, which was, what did you mean to convey when you asked what if Hamlet was a woman? And I'm not sure if that was entirely sort of the dialogue, but like perhaps we can talk a little bit about this tension between the masculine and the feminine, and because I think this is the first time it sort of comes out very explicitly in the Hamlet's live series. So
Yeah, so we did bring that line in,
mhm.
because he very clearly says, that um, I, the son of a dear father murdered, mm, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must, like a whore, unpack my heart with words and fall a cursing like a very drab. And drab means prostitute. Scullion also means that he is not making bones about it. That was the sensibilities of that time.
Mhm.
And the fact is that, even in India, I think we still have that. Even today, you will hear people say, "Mard ban, ro
Yeah,
kya raha hai? Ya chudiyan pehn rakhi hain kya?"
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that a woman is not associated with violence. Yes, we do have our goddesses who can have a very violent aspect to them also when required. Yeah, but which is why the question, because it is the feminine principle that I believe is required also to complement the masculine principle and keep the balance in life on earth, in the universe, in our lives. And I think that's why the question was placed there, that if Hamlet, everything in his life is prompting him towards a more masculine way of being. Everything is around him is telling him that if you do this, or if you don't do this, then you will be either less of a man, or this is how you can be more of a man.
Mhm.
Then this question was implicit, it was implied, and we only brought it out in our interpretation by actually voicing it. And not that a woman does not have recourse to violence, um, not that she could not be as much, um, in terms of, how do I put it? She could be as inadequate in her resources. Yes, there could be an inadequacy that she could experience in her emotional state. She could be prone, or she could have certain propensities, and that is perfectly okay. But can we even allow ourselves to imagine such a possibility? Because then, in that, we allow ourselves some freedom for change of thought on
Right.
multiple levels, in multiple spheres.
Right. Chanakya, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, I mean, just to add, I think one of the things that I can think of now, more than convey, I feel it's also the idea that when I was working on this, when I just started working on this, and I was trying to look at historically, um, uh, have there been productions, and of course there have been many, where Hamlet has been played by a female actor. And I was just trying to look that up, and it's happened for many years actually now. Recently in America, there was a production where they performed Hamlet, you know, the female actor lead, and they had a very different interpretation itself of of Hamlet. And I was thinking, and I mean, I'm just adding to what ma'am has already said, and I completely, I think that's the question in the process. That's the question one needs to ask about what course does Hamlet take, and does that push towards a certain kind of masculinity, the way Hamlet is written of, the way Hamlet is thought of in the Shakespearean sense. And I think more than convey, it was just to plant that idea, actually. So I think the meaning is also within the audience to see what would happen if that happened. And I think I find that very interesting that a sutradhar can do that, because I believe sutradhar, even traditionally narrators, always have the power to frame the question, give you the provocation, but not give you answers, and leave you with those thoughts. And I think that's where the idea comes within the narrative itself. And I feel like that's why it's more about putting that thought as opposed to a specific uh, conveyance. But yeah, I think what ma'am also said is something that can be extended into understanding. Yeah.
Right.
It's not about prescribing a course of action that Hamlet has to do this, or if he, is a woman, if he was a woman, then this is what he would do. The point is that the possibilities are open in both cases.
Mhm.
It's a sea of possibilities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think gender is, of course, a really important and interesting thing in Shakespeare, not just in Hamlet, but also in other plays like Macbeth, right? Where it is, when it is Macbeth's wife who sort of pushes him to commit this murder. And in that sense, is sort of the root of this violence. Or even in The Merchant of Venice, where there is this woman who dresses as a lawyer, but lawyers have to be men. So, and of course, in Shakespeare's time, you only have a man playing a woman. So it's a man playing a woman playing a man. And so there is this like really interesting sort of a gender ambiguity that happens, not just now, right? It's not just subversive now, but it was likely subversive at that time as well. So that's really interesting, and I'm glad that we sort of got to unpack this a little bit in Hamlet. Okay, so there are no other questions as such from the audience. If you have any other questions, we can take maybe one or two more. But in the meantime, I'll just ask a question that I don't think we've sort of addressed as such. But how does it feel directing or performing for Zoom, or like in, because I know we do polls and chats in most of the episodes, and we did a couple in this as well. But I'm just wondering, like, what the differences are and how it feels to perform for an audience that you can't see or access in the physical way, or even like, because in a webinar thing you can't see who's seeing you, right? So I'm just wondering, like, how your experience with moving to Zoom, in especially in the last 2 years, has been.
So I have a confession to make. This is my first online performance.
Oh,
I have not done an online performance. I mean, one has done other stuff online, but not a performance per se. Like right now where we're sitting, we've got lighting, and I have to say that all the rehearsals that I was doing, I mean, Chanakya and I, we had rehearsals together, and then because I had other commitments, I was not available and I was rehearsing on my own. And then I got back only yesterday, and then we did rehearsals together again, like from morning we've been at it. But there was something with that comes together. And when there is that suspension of disbelief for the actor also, I think magic happens. Because I didn't think I would, um, for one thing, I didn't give it so much thought, but I do think I had felt that I could not go to that depth of feeling
Mhm.
online with a
Mm.
performance.
Right.
But now, um, having experienced this, I did go to uh, very, very deep intensities and experienced that as an actor. I felt it, the tears were real, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Possible online. That's my takeaway today.
Yeah. Absolutely. Chanakya?
But it's very limiting, though. It is very limiting.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
nothing to compare with, the black box experience of the theater.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is. I don't think there is a comparison. Of course, live physical performances are very different. But I just want to add that even while setting for this piece, for this series, I think we all had our butterflies in our stomach before the show. We all had our moments because we are still doing it from one space. We are all at one venue where we are doing it. We are setting up with the microphone, with the video and everything. And I think even while we are sitting in the same room, sometimes like one of the actors last week said, no, no, you sit in the room because even if you laugh or even if you do a little bit of reaction, it
Ah,
feels that I'm performing live, you
right.
know. And I think uh, I feel, of course, the question still is there. I think we are learning. I definitely would say, speak for myself. I think I'm still learning how to adapt to Zoom. With this performance, with this project, I think we got a little closer to treating it also a little differently.
Right.
Though it's on Zoom, but we are still meeting physically and doing that. And I personally feel like one of the times in the rehearsal where I was asking ma'am, like, should we have polls, like, do you think it's distracting? And I think it was a very interesting thing that she said, that's my only connection I can make with my audience, so please let's keep it. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, that's so interesting. Like, how do we think of connection also, right, with our audience? So thank you all, I mean, who've come today for participating and being part of that interactive, whatever little interaction you could do to that. So that was very so. I think you have to find means of also keeping this conversation going back and forth, though there is just a software in between, but still there could there be presence felt in different ways. And there are Zoom performances where people have absolutely had a normal meeting room and audience have unmuted and chatted with the performers. That's also happened. So I think it's growing. And I don't know what the future is, but I can definitely say with this performance, I think we all found the language for this. Yeah, I'm really happy that it worked, and I think the online also is a form by itself. So it also starts dictating how much you want to do, the way
Mm.
you want to do it, how you want to do it. Yeah,
I
I think
think
it's a journey.
it has its own grammar. The online performances, the online medium will have its own grammar and it will dictate, like it has, like we've experienced,
Right.
you know.
Mm. No, that's a really interesting way to think about it, is that it is different, and that how do you, in fact, make the medium part of your process. Um, and I know you said that the tears were real and that you felt it and that you did feel that connection, even though you perhaps thought you might not. And I think that definitely came out in the performance, and it was really, really interesting and impactful. So thank you both once again. We are running out of time, so I'll just say this one comment that's been in the chat, which is outstanding performance by Padmavati ji and very relevant interpretation in contemporary times. So I think, yes, we all agree with that. And thank you again, all of you, for bringing, this really, really important and interesting series of Hamlet's Live to us at Psyche. Thank you once again, Padmavati and Chanakya, and of course, the rest of the cast and crew of Hamlet's. And if you're tuning in for the first time, don't forget to watch the rest of the Hamlet's Live episodes on YouTube, and do sign up for the final episode that's happening tomorrow at 5 p.m. And yeah, please do take care. Do explore, the Hamlet's Live exhibit, where all of these performances will go up, and you'll be able to see them all. I highly recommend, if you haven't, to see all of them. Each of them brings something really new and really, really crucial to the forefront. So thank you once again. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great weekend ahead. Please take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.